Are you wondering what the science says about the best pace strategy? This video will not only answer this question, but I'll also share practical tips and common pitfalls to give you the best chance for race day success. First of all, let's answer what is a pace strategy. Your pace represents how fast you travel, usually described as minutes per kilometer or minutes per mile. For example, if it takes you 5.5 minutes to complete your first kilometer, your current pace will be 5 minutes 30. If you continue to run another 9 kilometers and you finish in 60 minutes, your average pace will be 6 minutes. Therefore, a race pace strategy can be a predetermined game plan to calculate what pace you should travel at within certain sections of a race to optimize results. So, what does the science say about the best pace strategy? The answer can be found in this book, The Science and Practice of Middle and Long Distance Running. In particular, chapter 12, titled Strategic and Tactical Decision Making in Races. In fact, I interviewed Brian Hanley, one of the co-authors of this chapter, and asked him this question. This was his response. Where do we land in terms of pacing strategies?
There's no doubt that an even pace is the best strategy for distance running. If you want to do, let's say 3 hours for the marathon, then you want to go through halfway in an hour and a half. You want to do the first quarter in a quarter of that time in 45 minutes. There's no kind of doubt about this.
So the idea is to be as consistent as possible with your splits. And if you have gas in the tank, you can kick it up a notch in the final kilometers and potentially negative split, which is a term meaning your second half was faster than your first half. I will say that this even pace strategy does have one major limitation, and that is if the course has a significant amount of hills. So for my bonus tip at the end of this video, I'll show you how to mitigate this problem. But for now, let's follow Brian's advice about maintaining an even pace for the best results. Now the next question is how to determine the best pace throughout the race. Well, if we use the marathon as an example, you can use past marathon attempts as a rangefinder, but additionally you want to layer on what your recent training has been like and race day weather conditions. For example, your recent training may have been hindered by sickness or injury, and the weather conditions may be more hot and humid than anticipated. Considering these elements will help hone in on a more accurate target pace for race day. If this is your first marathon and can't refer back to previous marathons as a rangefinder, here are some tips. Brian Hanley suggested for good runners, take your best half marathon time, double it, and to allow for extra fatigue, add 10 minutes. For more recreational runners, let's add 20 minutes. For example, if your best half marathon was 1 hour and 40 minutes, we can double it to 3 hours and 20 minutes. Additionally, we plus 20 minutes and come to a total of 3 hours and 40 minutes. Calculating this final time in a website calculator comes to an even pace of 5 minutes and 13 seconds per kilometer or 8 minutes and 24 seconds per mile. If you don't have a half marathon under your belt, you can use 5K and 10K times. Runner's World has a calculator to plug in these values, but since this is so far removed from marathon distance, it will be less accurate. Once you've calculated your race pace, an additional recommendation is to start the race slightly slower. As this book states, marathon runners are advised to start conservatively based on their present fitness and target time to avoid slowing in the second half of the race. In other words, you probably think you can hold a certain pace comfortably for the entire 42 kilometers, but the consequence of getting this slightly off and running too fast at the beginning will dramatically impact fatigue and therefore completion time. So there is a definite upside to starting on the conservative side. If you watched my video on the biggest marathon mistakes, you'll know that a huge mistake runners make in their first marathon is starting out too fast. Based on that video, it is obvious that runners get caught up in the moment, feel rushed when people start passing them, or get distracted with the surge of energy at the start line and it throws off their predetermined game plan. Yes, this increase in pace may be accidental, but there are also a lot of runners who just take the risk and decide to run faster. In fact, a paper by Dina, who surveyed 1,300 marathon runners, said that marathoners who slow more in the second half of the race exhibit a larger discrepancy between their pre-race self-forecasts and their actual performance. This pattern is suggesting that overconfidence leads to greater slowing compared to runners with more reasonable expectations and less aggressive starting paces. Dina concluded that identifying risk-taking behaviour was a robust predictor of marathon slowing, and therefore worse marathon times. This once again illustrates that sensible planning will increase the likelihood of success. It is often said that for every 1 minute ran too fast at the start, 2 minutes will be sacrificed in the second half. So, our marathon example before came to an even pace of 5 minutes and 13 seconds per kilometre. With this new information, a slight adjustment in the conservative direction might be necessary. So, a starting pace of 5 minutes and 18 seconds per kilometre or 8 minutes and 33 seconds per mile might be more realistic and geared towards a better second half of the race. But this advice is completely different for elites looking to win a race. If you've watched elites in competition, you'll recognise that often they don't run at an even pace. This is because these athletes have to jostle for position and throw off their competitors with tactics. This is when mid-race surges and other crafty tactics are deployed. However, research from Hettinger reports that even for competitive athletes, a conservative start is ideal. If a slow start can be done, this fosters the ability to change speed and respond dynamically to changes in pace from other competitors. In a different scenario where elites push for personal bests without competitors, their approach falls back to an even pace strategy for best results. There is no better example than Eliud Kipchoge and his world record attempts. Kipchoge's Vienna attempt had perfect weather conditions, a pancake flat course, and a car as a pacer. You can see that his top performance had almost identical splits. We've learned by now that this strategy has a profound physiological benefit and gives you the best chance to reach a personal best. But one thing you may not consider is the added psychological boost when starting conservatively if entering a race with other runners. If you've ever ran a marathon, you'll know the mind games it plays and the victims it claims if you aren't psychologically prepared. However, starting off conservatively means you'll be passing people in the second half rather than the likelihood of people passing you. Here is what Brian said on this topic.
If you let people get too far ahead of you, it can be quite demoralizing. So what people do is they keep it up with others. It makes them feel better that they're with a group. But I think that backfires in the end, because when you get tired, you drop off, and that becomes even more demoralizing than if you let them go in the first place. I think a better strategy psychologically is to start off slowly, be disciplined in knowing that, don't worry, they're going to come back to me, and gain from when you start passing them out towards the end. So there's nothing better than in the last half that you're passing people out. It gives you a real boost. You feel like you're going a lot faster than you actually are, and it really encourages you to finish. The opposite of that is when people are passing you out, and that's no fun at all.
Okay, so we've learnt the physiological and psychological benefits of starting conservative and running at an even pace and potentially getting a negative split if things are feeling good. The next question would be, how do you monitor this plan? Here are some tips on how you can monitor and maintain your pace, and then we'll get to my final bonus tip. The first obvious one is to closely monitor your splits with your watch. You can set an alert to notify you every mile, kilometre, or even splits of 5 and 10 kilometers to ensure you are on task. But one thing we haven't covered yet, and that was mentioned in this book, is the importance of cognitive load. Constantly monitoring your pace requires brain power, and your brain requires energy to operate. So if your brain is constantly operating at a high level with checks and balances, it is going to zap important energy from the rest of the body. Let me say that again. The more you need to think, the more energy your brain requires, the more you will deplete your energy stores. To get to the finish line, you want to take the path of least resistance, both physically and mentally. So if you're watching this, you're probably saying to yourself, okay, Brody, you said I need even splits the whole race, but at the same time, you're saying constantly monitoring my pace will increase my cognitive load and zap my energy. Yes, I am saying that, but I do have a solution, and it is utilizing race pacers. Pacers are experienced runners who volunteer in big events and will have some sort of flag or visible indication of what time they will finish. This is the perfect solution because if you find the pacer that matches your goal time, all you need to do is follow them. All of the guesswork and cognitive load is gone, and for the most part, they'll be trying to hit even splits throughout the race. Okay, on to my final tip, because as I shared at the start, this even pace strategy will not work if the course involves a significant amount of hills. This is because trying to maintain an even pace fighting uphill will burn too many matches too quickly. Here is Brian once more explaining this.
You think about a cyclist who goes up a hill. It's a lot of work, but when they get to the top, they can actually freewheel the whole way down and get to the bottom without even doing any energy. But a runner can't do that. So they say you only gain back about half of what you lose in running. In other words, if you lose half a minute running up a certain hill, then when you run back down that hill, you gain back 15 seconds. You can't gain back everything you lost.
So the solution here is not to run at an even pace, but to run at an even effort level. Let's go back to our previous marathon example. Currently, our even pace is set to 5 minutes and 18 seconds per kilometer or 8 minutes and 33 seconds per mile for a flat course. When you run steadily at this pace on the flats, typically during a long training run, you can calibrate your internal effort level. In other words, practice getting a sense of how hard or how easy you feel at this pace. This is the effort level you'll need to match when running uphill. Your overall race time for a hilly course will be slower than that of a flat course, but this is natural and should be expected. But the even effort level strategy will get you the best results. Thanks for watching. Here is a video that YouTube has carefully selected for you based on your interests and previous viewing. Therefore, I highly recommend you checking it out next.